Hey, welcome back, everybody. Once again, this is Mark Lawrence, and we're all set to go against the spread on this weekend's college and pro football cards. It appears we passed the halfway point in college football. We're getting close in the National Football League. And with it, we're going to talk all about what's on tap this weekend with our cast of experts here on the Proline TV Against the Spread podcast. With that, I want to welcome in our experts. First of all, the legend himself, Jim Feist from Las Vegas. Jim, how are you doing these days?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
I'm glad to hear just that. Andy Isko, also from Las Vegas. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well as well. Of course, we're thinking about, I keep hearing about, we're going to have the great sports equinox this week with all four sports going on at the same time, and college basketball starting on Monday. Unfortunately, the World Series, and you're not going to have games rained out in Toronto, so we're going to miss it by like 1 or 2 days, depending on if the series goes past Saturday, of having college and pro football, college and pro basketball, and Major League Baseball and hockey going at the same time.
Well, the Dodgers have to do their part, Andy, to keep that equinox in full, to keep it
now
going.
I can root for Toronto because I had the Dodgers to win in 6.
Andy, who's pitching in the next game?
Yamamoto, I believe, is going. Let me pull it up on my screen here.
He's
Yamamoto
tonight on Thursday. Yes.
Is he going to?
And against Gausman of Toronto, and they're about a $1.40 favorite. Are the Dodgers on the road?
Who's pitching on short rest?
Well, I'll tell you who's not on short. Neither are on short rest, but
Okay.
what Yamamoto is, he's off back-to-back complete games, 9-inning complete games.
That's
you don't see
unbelievable.
that hardly at all.
And he was warming up in the in the 18-inning game. They were prepared to possibly have him come in if they went to the 19th inning. In fact, I'm waiting for Major League Baseball to finally make a modification to that ghost runner rule, and they'll say we will not use the ghost runner in the World Series until we get to a 19th inning.
Fucking idiots.
Greg DePalma.
No, that they didn't say that. I said that. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Okay, Greg DePalma, Prime Sports Network. How are you doing these days?
Oh, wait a minute. Oh my God, he's wearing a Jets hat.
I have an interesting tidbit about the Jets.
You've been promising to wear that hat all season long. It took you this long, Greg?
Yeah, I bought it the day before the opener, and it's been sitting in mothballs in my closet.
I was gonna say, how long did it take to get all the cobwebs off it before?
My goodness.
No, to show you how much of a fan I am, I actually just bought it last week. So imagine that. I bought it last week as a fan of this year's team. Yes.
Yeah, you bought it as perhaps motivation for them to do well. So maybe since they have a bye this week, maybe you buy another hat next week and keep buying hats until they lose their next game.
I could do that. Yes. I'll give them one more chance with this hat. And if they win 2 in a row, which is possible, they got Cleveland next.
Yeah.
Then I'll go get a third.
I was thinking to myself, I didn't say this to anybody, but I was wondering if you made a list, and everybody's going to have a different list, how many head coaches and how many quarterbacks that are playing in the NFL right now should not be in the NFL as in their positions?
I think you could probably start with the bulk of the backups, Jim, the backup quarterbacks. Starting.
I'm talking about the ones that are actually playing as starters right now.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is there are 32 teams.
Well, every backup quarterback has an expiration date. You're just waiting for them to play themselves back out of the job, literally. Yeah. Carson Wentz, Andy Dalton, etc. Right?
Well, I think Carson Wentz, we're not going to see him anymore in the league. I think.
No, you're right. I think he's done.
I think that's done. He's had the surgery anyway. But New Orleans is just trying out who they have to see who they have to draft next. That's all they're doing.
Of course, the other corollary to that, or the opposing thing, is how many of them are going to be the next Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold, who have careers resurrected in the right situation.
I think we're going to see plenty of those.
Remember, all these guys have talent when they're drafted in the league. They all have talent at some sort of level or not to have been able to be drafted out of the thousands of players who play college football each year. It's just a question of sometimes going to the wrong coaching, wrong situation.
True. Very true.
Yeah. So
the best example I use of that is Steve Young in the old days. He played for the LA Express. He went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, couldn't do anything. Tampa Bay was a horrible team. gets traded to San Francisco, makes the Hall of Fame.
That is perfect example.
That is
Perfect.
the example I use all the time.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
guys,
'cause
let's
it's
get this
perfect.
party started here if we can, okay? And let's talk about the white elephant in the room before we begin into our NFL segment. And it would have to be all of what NFL favorites destroyed last week, going 10-2 straight up and against the spread. Only a one-score game. Average win margin, 18.5 points a game. Yes,
And
just
the point spread did not come into play in any of the games last week, which is also
That's incredible.
yes, not one game.
Especially with so many favorites winning and all covering. And what we have, I think, 5 games decided by 21 points or more.
You go back 2 weeks on NFL favorites. They're 24-4 straight up and 22-6 against the spread. So these favorites have been really ringing the register the past 2 weeks. And I'll tell you guys a quick little anecdote before we get into this. I'm in this contest in Cleveland. It's a really big contest. It's a big entry fee, a $6,000 entry fee. You have to pick every game every week. And we generally do myself and my partner.
Straight up or ATS?
All ATS. So my partner and I have done really well in the contest. We've won like 3 times in the last 6 years, but we're getting destroyed this year. And I talked with them, and he says, I says, listen, Billy, I says, the thing we have to do, absolutely have to do, is focus on the underdogs right here, right now. Don't even look at a favorite. And he says, I agree with you, because you see this stuff return to the norm quicker than usual. He says, I says, well, who are you looking at? And he says, I like Detroit this week. The first thing he mentions is a favorite, It's like, oh boy.
Well, Mark,
the thing is, with the bottom of the league so bad, is it really possible to look at things in that light? Because these teams, they're really bad. The Raiders are bad. Jacksonville is questionable. New Orleans is bad. You got bad teams, and can you really depend on these bad teams to really come back to the norm? If, of course, and that depends a lot on what the odds makers do with the line. If they should be making the line 10 or 11 and they make it 7 or 8, they're kind of robbing the dog, and that's us dog players who get killed.
Take a look at the number of favorites this week that are less than 7 points. Two-thirds of the lines are under 7 points.
Yep.
And then Jim makes a point. Lines that used to be 7 are now 4.5, 5.
So, Jim, do you think that the smaller numbers are there because they're enticing people to lay these favorites because they look small, they look attractive, and they've been rolling in the hay with the chalk the past 2 weeks? You think that's why part of the reason these numbers are short again this week?
Well, the bookmakers get killed when the favorites win like this.
Yes, they do.
Okay, so you would think the odds makers would make lines higher and not lower.
Yeah.
And they have in the past, but we're not seeing it so much now, right?
No. And that's really, so they made Green Bay 13.5 over Carolina. Is Pence, it's not Pence, but is Young playing or not? A lot of this stuff goes back to who the starting quarterback is. Obviously, Penix. That makes it. No, that's Young. Excuse me. That Atlanta is
Young of Carolina. Yeah. Bryce
Young. Yeah, it looks like Bryce Young is going to play a start because he did practice fully on Wednesday.
Okay. How about Penix for Atlanta?
Yeah, Penix is trending towards playing, so I would say he'll play.
Now we have a Flacco issue with Cincinnati that we have to deal with because he's got a shoulder injury.
And who do they go to if Flacco doesn't go? Is Browning still on the team?
It goes back to
Browning is still on the team? Okay.
Browning, yeah.
Yeah. It was surprising that Browning played so poorly this year because the first time he came in for Burrow 2 years ago, he played pretty well for a backup quarterback. So
he did.
I don't know what happened. So I think he deserves another shot. Yeah. I don't know what happened there.
Maybe the realization of being a starting quarterback
in Tennessee.
So much for him,
You got a brand new quarterback in Tennessee but that whole team is really down. But you got a road favorite in the Chargers at 9.5, 8.5, something like that. So, that's kind of a legitimate line with a question. the quality of Tennessee as being bad. So the question now is, if the favorites are going to win like this and the bookmakers are getting killed, which happened last week, should the odds makers be making these lines higher? And the answer would be yes. However, they're afraid of the sharps coming in and grabbing the dogs and then getting killed on that side of the offense. Like, you can't put New Orleans with these two quarters. I think Rattler was doing pretty well, but they have to find out what this other kid can do, because
this is by design, right? Exactly.
Yeah, they have to figure out what the hell they're going to do in the draft. So they got to look at what this guy can do. But the Rams are, potentially a Super Bowl contender, over a 14-point favorite now. This is the reason all this is such a hodgepodge. The reason a lot of people are having trouble is because the quality of the bottom of the league is really bad.
One thing with Cincinnati, part of the reason Browning, I think, is having issues is they've got no running game. They are 31st in the league, 83 yards per game. Well, if you don't have a run to take the pressure off the defense can focus solely on the passing game. And, when you're a backup and you don't get that much playing time, even in practice, you don't get that many reps, it's difficult. And I think that's the issue that Browning has faced, no running support.
So they move Flacco to the Wolves instead. That's all.
Houston.
Well, Flacco's a smarter, more experienced quarterback that exceptional at throwing the ball and finding the incredible receivers they have. Browning's not that talented, so there's a difference there. They're both backups, but they're both backups to Burrow, but Flacco is much better.
I wonder if another aspect of this might be is that the books will often rely on the sharp money late to come in and take underdogs to sort of balance things out, because the public's going to generally play mostly favorites. And it may not be happening as much this year because these lines are so low that there's no value being perceived by coming in and taking +3 when you should be taking, say, +4.5 or +5. But because the lines are so low and they're not going to move 2-3 points.
Well, that's a valid point Jim brings up about the lines being what they are, largely because we're seeing a disparity of talent in the National Football League from top to bottom. Remember the old gold sheet days, Jim, when you'd read the gold sheet and every team was rated, you could say A through D.
Yeah.
Now this rating would be probably A through K as far as talent goes.
Yes.
From the top to the bottom.
By the way, what I would like to see someone do, and maybe it'll be one of our viewers or listeners or some other site may have done it, but we talk about the quality of the league. You've got a few teams at the top, a number of teams at the bottom, and a great majority in the middle. I'd like to see someone do a study. Let's say go back 4 years. Let's go 21, 2, 3, and 4. So after COVID, and take a look like after week 8, what the standings look like. Are there more teams this year that have won, say, 2 games or less than in each of the last 4 seasons? Because the perception is there's really a lot of bad teams at the bottom. Is that reflected in the win-loss record going back? Or is this year maybe there are more teams that are meeting the qualifications of being a poor team with, let's say, 2-6 or worse going back? Because it's easy to compare things this year as far as saying there are really a lot of really bad teams, but we have to put it in the proper context of, does that make this year unusual compared to past years when there were also a lot of bad teams, but our memories don't go back and say, oh, yeah, there were 6 teams that had only 2 wins after 8 weeks.
Well, guys, let's break down the National Football League card this week. And before we do, I want to get and share with our listeners out there what I've been doing in the past. I'm just saying, and, what I'm just saying is there's a lot of hidden stats and facts about the National Football League at this point of the season. I went over this last week. I'm going to do a quick review of it again this week. Mentioned from the top that the Philadelphia Eagles lead the league in 1-score wins with 5 of them. Arizona and the Jets lead the league with 1-score losses with 5 of them. Atlanta leads the NFL with 6 games in which they've held an opponent to either a season low or a second low defensive effort. Indianapolis leads the NFL in 6 games in which they've allowed season high yardage. So where does it bring us to? It brings us to the NFL playoff picture today, where it stands going into this particular weekend. And if we look at that from that concept, that standpoint, if the NFL games playoffs are being played this week, the number 1 seeds would be the Colts and the Packers. The number 8 seeds, just on the outside looking in, would be the Jaguars and the Bears. Maybe a little bit more incentive on their plate starting this week. And in the AFC wildcard rounds, the pairings would be number 2 New England hosting number 7 Kansas City. That seems kind of odd but nonetheless, that's what it would be this week. We find probably a number 2 seed, home dog seed, taking more than a field goal in that game. Number 3, Denver Broncos hosting number 6, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the number 4 Steelers hosting the number 5 Buffalo Bills. Over in the NFC side, we would find the number 2 Philadelphia Eagles hosting San Francisco. Number 3 Tampa Bay Bucks, who have really are enjoying their week of rest. I can guarantee you that team was looking for an oxygen tank, and they got it finally this week.
Yeah.
Tampa's going to host the LA Rams, number 6 seeded Rams, and number 4 Seattle will be hosting the Detroit Lions. Any thoughts on these seedings right now, these playoff pairings, Andy or Jim, Greg, before we get into our game?
Yeah, I have one additional comment about you're just saying.
Yes.
Arizona, if I recall correctly, and you probably can check this out. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's true. All 7 of their games this year, or every game they've played, I think it's 7, because they were on bye, have been decided by 7 points or less. 5 of them, as you point out, were losses. So it's just something to keep in mind as far as Arizona goes.
Yeah, Arizona's.
I would predict that none of the matchups that you just said will be there.
Are going to happen?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yes, none.
Well, Andy, the Arizona factor that I mentioned was losses. They're 2 wins, but also 1 score wins. Right.
Exactly. So that's when you start seeing big numbers on Arizona, see, and that's interesting because now we'll see what happens this week with a very short line down in Dallas. So they could still lose a 1-score game but not cover.
That's a great comment Jim throws out there about none of these pairings would probably happen between now and the end of the football season. And wouldn't that be a nice futures ticket for a sports book to put a prop up on? These are what the pairings would be. Anybody want to buy these exact pairings now? And you can. And
you can modify it each week during the season, so it can be a season-long thing, at least until, let's say, the beginning of December. You
broke out Andy, a little bit there.
Yeah, Andy's connection is not good. I don't know what's wrong with it. Yeah. Well, you could go in and buy pairings on all these.
Yes, you can. Right.
You can, and then, but none of the ones you announced would
are
happen.
Likely.
They're not going to happen.
No. Well,
the thing is the way that it all goes back to the preseason, and we all talked about this, where they don't really prepare as well as they should for the beginning of the year. And the real preseason is the first 4 games of the regular season. So now we're starting to see who is who and who's good and who's not good, because all of that's out of the way. And the cream is rising to the top, which is why the favorites won so much last week. And that could very well continue because these bad teams are bad.
Yeah, they're bad. There's no question about that. It depends sometimes on bad teams being able to draw teams down to their level. If it's a football game that the good team is not all that keen on or interested in playing and maybe has a bigger game on deck, you think some of these bad teams can do just that. But, it didn't happen for the Browns against New England last week. The Browns couldn't bring them down low enough. So it doesn't happen each and every time.
No. But you can look at Carolina Green Bay this week. It's a big line, 13.5.
Yes.
And Green Bay just had a very important game, beating, kind of important to the players because they beat Aaron Rodgers. And they had that great second half to beat Pittsburgh with 20 straight completions by Love. But now they play Carolina. They're sitting there with a 2-touchdown line on them. Young's coming back. And next week, Green Bay has to play the Eagles.
Yep, that's
it's very possible they could look ahead to that.
Not only that, Carolina is 4-4, meaning that they are, at least right now in their mind, they're in playoff contention for a wild card in that division. And we've seen lethargic efforts from Green Bay. Remember, we talked about how after week 2, Green Bay was the team, and they hadn't looked like that since then until last week against Pittsburgh. And they struggled even against Cincinnati. Remember, they won that game 27-18. You would have thought Green Bay would have scored at least another touchdown or 2 against that Cincinnati defense. So this could be one of those situations where Green Bay wins, but let's say by 8 to 11 points.
At 4-4, Carolina is right now the number 9 seed. So they are in truth definitely
and a good running game.
Yes.
They have a fantastic running game with those 2 backs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. The new head coach seems to be working wonders for this Carolina Panthers.
Now, if Young is playing rather than the Red Rifle, who obviously is not really a rifle anymore.
He didn't load it up too well.
He's more of a BB gun.
Yes.
So, it's I'm not a comedian, but anyway, that's the point I wanted to make there.
Well, it's an excellent point. So that's what we're looking at, guys, this week. We'll see whether or not this onslaught of points favorites continues this week. I don't personally believe it will. Just the law of averages and the return to the norm, regardless of how much the talent weighs down. Maybe it's not to the degree our point has been in the past, as Jim mentioned, but I cannot see an average win margin of 18.5 points by the favorites this week. It just
Mark, there was a comment here from Shaw NY in York.
Sean.
Okay, Sean. Okay, good. Thank you. Why are who said we're picking Minnesota? Because that's what he's saying.
Nobody on this show.
I didn't see
No.
that. No.
Well, that would be me in our newsletter. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. And we're gonna tear
Secret's
the
out.
team down. So my side was just exposed. Okay.
oh, okay. See, that's Jim. Jim's trying to produce the show,
Yeah.
and it's going way off.
I like to read the comments because if we don't do that, they won't want to comment because we'll ignore them, and I don't want to.
Well,
do that.
and we love hearing the comments. Exactly. And I love the comment on the comments. So, when we get to that game, and we're going to do that right now. Let's get into
Where
it.
was that? Was that in the chat
Actually,
box?
I'd like to hear why you
Yes,
like
in the
Minnesota.
chat box. Yes.
That's when I was disconnected. That's why I missed that.
Yeah, I want to hear why you like JJ McCarthy this week.
I didn't say that I like JJ McCarthy. Did I say that I like JJ McCarthy? I don't.
Sort
The
of.
Vikings might have a better chance with Charlie McCarthy for you old time listeners.
You really think so, huh?
Charlie McCarthy.
I'm more of a Kevin O'Connell guy, guys. I think he's an excellent head coach. And he's played on Thursday, so he's got 10 days of rest to get ready for this football game. The whole world is going to be on the Detroit Lions with a week of rest coming into the contest. It's a big division game. Detroit gets that bye week. It makes them look even more appealing in the contest here. But there's one thing that Minnesota does under O'Connell when they allow an extraordinary amount of points. They really toughen it up defensively. And I think there's a ton of value in this football game. And maybe next week you'll ask me, now I know why you like J.J. McCarthy. Okay. I'm not saying.
No, but the reason you like Minnesota is not because of McCarthy; it's because of the defense.
That's because of the defense. Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
But look, the Vikings could get shut out and still cover it, in theory.
Yes, they could.
Getting all these points, yeah.
They could.
So McCarthy may not. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the coach doesn't have McCarthy try to do all that much. Maybe emphasize a lot of ball control to limit the number of possessions that the Lions have in the game. It's possible that way.
Okay, so where do we get 48.5 points if McCarthy can't deliver an offense that can put up at least 2 or 3 touchdowns?
Well, keep this in mind too. All right. When J.J. McCarthy played the first couple of games of the season, there was no Christian Darrisaw. He just happens to be their best offensive lineman.
Right.
There was no Addison, who just happens to be their number 2 wide receiver. So he had 2 of their most valuable players on offense not playing with him in his first couple of starts as a rookie. And now he's had some time, and we saw this with Bryce Young last year. Sometimes these young quarterbacks, they get in, they play a couple of games, they come out, and they get the perspective from being in the game and then now being out, being able to look at the game. And we saw what happened to Bryce Young when he came back in. He was a completely different quarterback. So I'm right on with Mark regarding O'Connell. And the reason O'Connell is a great coach, especially a great quarterback coach, is, and that's, I don't think that's just automatically going to stop. I think that he obviously sees something in McCarthy. And look, as a Michigan fan, I understand what McCarthy did at Michigan. I know he didn't throw the ball for like 350 yards every game. It was a defensive running approach, and he was basically just captaining the ship. And when he had to make a big throw, he did. But there's also something about the kid that goes all the way back to high school that these coaches are enamored with. And it's that kind of maturity. It's that kind of smarts. It's that kind of those intangibles that a quarterback coach like O'Connell can get the most of. So I don't think if Minnesota covers this game, it's 15-14. I think if they cover this game, I think McCarthy's going to have a good game. That's what I think you're gambling on. McCarthy, I think, has to have a good game if they win this game or cover the game.
I'm one. Go ahead, Jim.
How's Gary or Greg? How are the injuries on the defensive side for Detroit? They're coming back that were hurt last week?
We don't know yet. It's still there are two defensive backs that Terrion Arnold has been practicing, but Kirby Joseph wasn't practicing earlier in the week. And of course, he's an all-pro caliber safety. So it's still unknown at this time. It's only Thursday, so we still have till tomorrow, but nothing guaranteed, nothing full participation I've seen. If I see anything, I'll let you know before the broadcast ends. But at this point, it's still looking a little iffy in the secondary for Detroit. But everything else, as far as their front seven, is with McNeil coming back, is a big boost. But this is a team that has to add an edge rusher at the deadline. We got 5 more days to go before the trade deadline. They have to find an edge rusher because one of their edge rushers, Davenport, got injured again. That's all the guy does is get injured. And they were banking and hoping that he'd be healthy this season. And nope, he gets off to a good start, a couple games, gets hurt, done. And now they're hoping he'll be back again, but they can't count on him. So at this point in time, there's still about an edge rusher short and a couple of guys in the secondary potentially short.
Well, let me share with you guys something that I'll put the refs in this game that I didn't mention, which works out of my database, which I rely religiously on every day, every game. There's a unique situation in the game with Minnesota, and it involves division matchups where one team has taken the other team out exactly 5 times in a row. When those teams have been beat up 5 times in a row and they're taking on an opponent that's off a bye week, like Detroit is, it's only happened 12 times. Those teams have won 9 games straight up. And if they're a 400 or better team, they're 6-0 to the spread in this role. I'm not going to step away from that because it's the Detroit Lions, okay? They just happen to be who they happen to be. And Minnesota's right now the number 12 seed in the playoffs. You think they're not coming to play this football game? They're coming to play this football game.
The thing with Minnesota is, and I have to wonder if they realize that they may have made a poor decision in not bringing back Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, he led this team to a 14-2 record last year. They were playing the Detroit Lions in Week 18 for the NFC North title. And, of course, we know what happened. It was a 31-9 win by Detroit. In the first meeting, Detroit also won, was 31-29. The Vikings were playing well, and of course, Darnold had that rough game at the end of the season that caused it. So this is a Minnesota team that I think, had they brought back Darnold, they'd have a better record right now, once McCarthy went down. And I think they have to realize that that was just a poor decision they made. And look what Darnold's doing over in Seattle.
The thing with that, though, Andy, is they weren't going to be able to give him a 1-year deal. And so it was either, are you going to invest in Darnold for the next 3 to 5 years, or is J.J. McCarthy do you trust J.J. McCarthy? And that's the road they went down. And we're not going to know the answer to that question until the playoffs, because we can sit here and say that Sam Darnold's having a great season, but that's what he had last year until he screwed up at the end of the season when the games mattered.
Well, the thing is, had they given him, let's say, a 3-year contract, and they determined after this year, for example, that McCarthy is now ready to be the starter in 2026, he had tremendous trade value.
There's also news out there that they went hard after Aaron Rodgers, and they didn't get him, even though they offered more money. So they knew they had a problem.
No, I don't know where that story comes from.
I don't
my sources are that they had no interest in Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I don't think they put all their eggs in JJ. They didn't. They liked him and they wanted him, but they wanted somebody else in there.
And he was also coming off an injury that kept him out all last season, and who knows how you're going to respond to that.
Well, they're actually being criticized for not having, like you're saying, Jim, they're actually being criticized for not having that backup quarterback there because, that if they shouldn't, I mean, really, you would think they should have been precautious about the fact that he was coming off an injury. He's never started an NFL game, and you don't have a backup quarterback. You don't have anybody viable. So I don't know why they didn't do that. There were other options out there. I mean, just take a look at Arizona. I mean, they've got a pretty good backup quarterback in Jacoby Brissett. You can find these guys, so I don't know why they didn't do it.
Well, things interesting. They had Carson Wentz. They had Carson Wentz, who was good enough apparently for Kansas City to have him as his backup. So maybe
Yeah,
it wasn't a
he came
terrible
in
decision.
late. He came in late, so he was probably
Yeah.
like there. Well, we couldn't get the guy we wanted,
Yeah.
so let's just bring in Wentz. And you're right, Andy. I mean,
The best of who was
I thought he
available,
would play
right.
better than he did myself.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's close out this football game and get your votes here. We'll start out first with Jim. You, Detroit, Minnesota. Which side of this football game are you putting your money on?
I like Detroit in the game.
I know. I know. Before I asked you, but I had to let people hear that.
I just don't believe that J.J. McCarthy is ready to start in the NFL. I like his talent. I like his skill set, but it takes time to get to this level to be able to read defenses. And the only weakness I see in Detroit, other than the few injuries they have on defense, is they have a new offensive and defensive coordinator, and that's that we knew that going into the season. So and coming off the bye, and I just think Detroit is at home. They're very, very difficult, and the shame of it is Minnesota's roster, other than the quarterback, is as good as any roster in the league. Managerially, they made a big mistake in depending on JJ to be their leader this year. I don't think it's going to work out very well.
Well, Detroit, one of 6 teams in the National Football League this year that has a top 10 ranked offense and defense. Andy, which side of this football game are you looking at?
I'm with Jim. I like this Detroit team. They were the best team in the league last year. It seemed headed to be make their first Super Bowl appearance until they had all those defensive injuries at the end of the year, and they got wasted by Washington. And I think they have a rematch with Washington sometime later this season. That'll be sort of an interesting game to handicap. But Detroit is one of those teams that when they are able to put it on, they pour it on. That's the mentality of Campbell. And I think they are catching a team that with McCarthy, we don't know how sharp he's going to be. He could be prone to making some mistakes, creating some turnover opportunities for Detroit to put some points on the board. So I think laying anything under double digits in this game has me on Detroit.
And what about you, Greg? Which side of this game are you looking at?
I'm going to take Minnesota. I like the fact that they've had some time to prepare to kind of restart everything. Not that it was a full week off. I mean, they played on Thursday, so they're giving it a little extra time. But I really think that, this coaching staff is too good for them to be playing like this for the way they've been playing. And even though their yardage has been a lot better with Wentz than it was with McCarthy the first couple of games, there was no questioning that. Again, you got to go back to the fact, as I said in the beginning, there was no Darrisaw, there was no Addison. So I'm very intrigued by giving J.J. McCarthy and Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores the benefit of the doubt, especially that coaching staff. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to make this game close, because it really is a monster game for them. They're 3-4. Detroit does not need the game as much as they do. That doesn't mean Detroit won't win. It just means that they are looking at this game like it could be their season. And I think that because of that, I expect them to play as good as I think they played all season.
Well, Greg,
By the way, I was just going to say the problem with Minnesota is going to be they're going to have to find a way to run the football. They're the number 25 rushing team in the league, under 100 yards per game. And Detroit is number 4, under 90 yards per game do they allow. So if that enables Detroit and their aggressive defensive nature to basically take away the passing game because Minnesota can't run the ball, that could create some issues for Minnesota offensively.
And if McCarthy throws for 300 yards, what does that mean?
That means they probably don't just cover the game. They might very well win it.
They might well win it. Greg, I got to thank you for your vote on Minnesota, because I was all set that all 3 of you guys were going to line up on the Lions. And my answer to that would be I'd have a better chance of selling Minnesota to a sold-out crowd at Ford Field in Detroit than I would selling them to you guys.
Okay.
But Greg came through.
Well, keep it also an injury update on Andrew Van Ginkel. Is one of the top edge rushers for the Vikings. So that's something that's very important. And 2 big trends that I got once again from the Playbook magazine that you could find here. And since it's are we officially at the midway point in the NFL?
This will be the 9th week of the 18 weeks. So they played a different number of games because of the distribution of buys. But basically, this will end the first half of the season.
Okay, so even though it is the midway point, you can still get a lot of information out of the guide if for some reason you've failed to purchase it yet. So I've got two really good trends here, one good for each side. Detroit is 19-2 against the spread off of a double-digit spread win, and they're 2-0 in that role this year. So I'm not sure we picked the right side there, Mark. But Minnesota has covered 8 straight as dogs of 5 or more after they've allowed 35 or more.
And by the way, Detroit is going to show up with a lot of positive trends because I have to believe, based upon the number of games that Dan Campbell has coached in the NFL with the Lions in his, 4+ years, he's got to have the best point spread record of all time over that span of games.
He does. He's over 67% on the blind. So it's kind of hard finding holes.
And that's like about 70 games.
Right. That's right. Exactly. Finding holes with what Dan Campbell does, at least from a handicapping perspective. You got to really, really dig deep. If you're doing that, you're probably more.
His straight up record is excellent, especially if you throw out his first year of the 3-13, 3-13-1.
It's his love for piling the points on, I guess.
Yeah.
Per se, just beating teams down. Let's get over our second game, guys.
He's the James Franklin of the NFL against weak teams. Only with, I think, a much better long-term future.
and a better record against good teams than James Franklin had. Yes.
Oh boy, that's true.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't feel sorry for these coaches who are getting $40-50 million to not coach.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, let's get over to Pittsburgh right now. What do you say, guys? The Colts and the Steelers. This is going to be a big game for playoff positioning, if you will. As I mentioned early on in the show, Pittsburgh would be the number 4 seed right now. The Colts would be the number 1 seed coming in at the playoffs that were happening this particular weekend. Jim, who are you looking at here?
Oh boy, I was wrong on Pittsburgh last week against Packers. I really thought Pittsburgh was the right side. First half looked that way. Second half, they just disappeared, and Jordan Love just played out his butt. 20 straight completions. I mean, it was domination, and I don't know what the hell is going on with Pittsburgh's defense, but they are not Pittsburgh's defense. They borrowed some defense from somebody else because this is not them.
Yeah, Baltimore.
Yeah, but they're bad too. But the Colts have done remarkable things this year. Their offensive line is strong. Their running back is probably at this point you'd rate him the best in the league.
Could be the MVP, Jim. Right now.
Yeah. Jones is playing really, really well.
He's at an MVP caliber level too, at least stat-wise.
Exactly. I'm not much for laying points on the road, but if in this case with this game, I'm gonna just go money line Colts.
Money line Colts. Jim likes the Colts to win this football game, not get hung up to the spread. He'll lay the point or the money line for Indianapolis to beat Pittsburgh. Andy, where are you going here, Pittsburgh or Indianapolis?
Well, let's take a look at Indianapolis stats. And if the name of the team that with those stats was Kansas City instead of Indianapolis, I don't think you'd see this short of a line. Now, I know, Mark, you pointed out Indianapolis's negative role or negative record in the yardage being outgained in 6 of 7 games or season high, I think you said.
Yes.
But look at, yards are one measure, but the bottom line is how many points do you allow? And that's a combination of factors. The Colts are number 1 in the league, averaging 33.8 points per game. They are number 8, which is extremely good in top 10 ranking, 19.2 points per game. So they're winning by an average margin of 14 points per game, and they are beating weak teams. Now, I don't know where you put Pittsburgh in. This is probably the weakest defense that Tomlin has had, maybe in his entire coaching career with the Steelers. The offense for Pittsburgh, it's ranking near the bottom. If you use, again, the traditional total yardage, they're 25th. That's a huge difference it's on nearly 100-yard difference between Indianapolis, even allowing fewer yards than Pittsburgh is allowing. You look at the numbers, and Indianapolis only 4 turnovers lost all year. Pittsburgh's done well, only 6, but you combine that with the turnovers created, let's say 12. So Indianapolis +8. They're getting contributions from their defense as well as a very efficient offense. I think this line is just a little bit too short, and I'll go with this way. Last week, going into the game, Green Bay and Pittsburgh, and I was also on Pittsburgh, and part of the handicap is, well, Green Bay has certainly played the better football this year, so you'd have to say that they are the better team, especially when you look at a lot of the numbers, but the situation was very, very good for Pittsburgh. So do I feel, so situation did not prevail when the better team. And I could almost say the same thing is true here. Indianapolis has been the better team this year because Pittsburgh's defense has been as bad as we've seen in recent years. Would I feel worse playing Pittsburgh because it's a good situation and they lose? Or would I feel worse if I play Indianapolis with the better team and the better numbers and the ability to win and I lose that one? I think I would feel worse if I played situation over numbers, especially with a short price. So I'm on Indianapolis.
Andy going with the Colts this weekend. Greg, where are you going in this football game?
I'm backing Andy 100%. I jumped all over the Colts at this line. Until they show that there's a weakness, until they have a bad game. And I know that they haven't played the toughest schedule, but when they have played tough teams, they've shown up. They've won a few, and they lost one. So that's okay. But Pittsburgh, like Andy said, I think the bottom line on Pittsburgh last week was we all kind of felt, as Andy said, that Pittsburgh, that was a good situation for them to go with Pittsburgh based on Green Bay's problems as a road favorite and Aaron Rodgers at home and all that stuff. And if they couldn't win that one, then I'm sorry. I don't know why I would pick them this week, especially against this freight train coming in like the Colts. So I'm all over the Colts in this week.
I want to point one thing out about Indianapolis that nobody seems to bring up, at least I can't recall. Do you recall last year the Indianapolis Colts started the season 7-1 against the point spread?
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah. I think they were 4-4 straight up. Remember, Steichen took over this team in 2023. They were 9-8, so they showed some improvement over the previous year. They went 8-9 last year. So this is a team that was building. And remember, the last 2 years, they didn't have a quarterback. Now they do.
Yeah, they also ended up with a losing record last year. After
8-9. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Exactly.
And they're getting a little old, Pittsburgh. I think that's part of the issue on defense. I mean,
wonder how much they miss Micah Fitzpatrick when they made a trade with Ramsey.
I have to be alone on an island in this football game, and I will be. I'm playing coach and quarterback here for Pittsburgh. One, you don't see Aaron Rodgers lose back-to-back home games very many times in his career. You don't see Mike Tomlin dropping back-to-back home games very many times in his career. And the worst situation for a team to be in is to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers after their defense has collapsed 2 games in a row. They've allowed 30 or more points their last 2 football games. They opened the season up doing just that. In the next game, they went on the road and won and covered at New England. And you go deep into the database at Mike Tomlin, he is absolutely masterful after allowing 30 or more points in back-to-back football games. It's a character thing about him. I know Pittsburgh had better defenses back then than we're seeing here right now. But you're talking about humiliation to a coach and a quarterback in a role like this. I'm going to go with Pittsburgh here. Now, I'm going to say this. Pittsburgh is almost in the Indianapolis Colts category in that, I mean, look at here. 1, 2, 3, 5 times they've allowed season high yards or second high yardage. So Pittsburgh is not a whole lot far behind the Colts in that particular that statistic. But again, I'm going quarterback. I'm going coach. I'm going humiliation. I'm going the Pittsburgh Steelers.
This is going to be a very important game for the Steelers one way or another. If they win this game, I think it really, you feel more confident as a Steeler fan that, you know what, we've got this nice lead over the Ravens. We're not going to let it slip away. We're going to be okay. If they lose this game, I'm not sure they're going to be able to get that back. I think this is a huge game for them.
Well, let's get to the biggest game on tap in the National Football League card this week and maybe this season. Who knows? The big game, Kansas City invades Buffalo. So red hot are the Kansas City Chiefs that they're now road favorites at Buffalo. I don't think that would have been the case a month ago. We would have found a complete reversal in this number. Buffalo would have been a 2-point favorite. But now it's the Chiefs who are 2 because of all the work and what they've accomplished here of late. How do you look at that, Jim? Do you think there's value been taken out of Kansas City because of that? Or do you see this football team continuing their winning ways?
Well, this is a very tough spot to be going just to win. Forget about whether the point spread they're a favorite or a dog. Kansas City going to Buffalo and winning is tough. That's a tough situation. Who's playing better? It's Kansas City, but Kansas City's playing better than anybody in the league except maybe the Colts. And this very well could be the AFC Championship game. It has been before. Buffalo seems to win the in-season games, and Kansas City seems to win the playoff games. I'm not really sure what to do with this game. I don't like the point spread. I don't like Kansas City being favored there. I'm not even going to get involved in the money line. I am going to play the game over, however. I think I believe that when the line opened at 50.5, some big boys came in and immediately jumped on the over, and I agree with that move. I like the over. And we're not going to be dealing with Buffalo weather, which later in the season with some bad weather, that would make a big difference. But we're not dealing with that right now. So I like both these teams to go over the total.
Jim's going over Chiefs and Bills, high-scoring football game. A lot of points on the scoreboard. Andy, what's your take on this contest?
Well, let's go back for a little season perspective. I often bring up the advanced lines that the Westgate posts over the summer for all 18 weeks, sides and totals. Now, of course, the limits are low, but you can still make a bet on any of those games. So I like to take a look, especially as we get to this point of the season, how things have changed from what the lines were back in August to where they are now. And back in August, Chiefs at Bills, the Bills were a 3-point home favorite in that game. Now, when the Westgate put up their advanced line 10 days ago, I believe this game was close to a pick'em, or maybe no, this game was a pick'em last Tuesday when the Westgate put up their lines. When they reposted the lines after the action of this week with Kansas City and Buffalo's results, the Chiefs opened a 1.5-point road favorite, and they're right around 1.5 to 2.5, depending upon where you are. Jim said it perfectly. Buffalo wins the regular season. Kansas City wins the games that count. I wouldn't be surprised for either team to win this game. I would expect it to be a close game. I will go back to the start of the season. If you remember when Buffalo hosted Baltimore on that Sunday night game, which at the time was thought to be, that'll be the most entertaining game we'll see all year, that 41-40 shootout, which lasted 1 week until we had the Giants and Cowboys 40-37 the following week, and we've seen some very entertaining games since then. But there was a situation where Baltimore had a nice lead in the game, and Buffalo came back and ended up winning and covering as a small home dog, where they would not have covered as a small home favorite. Kansas City, of course, struggled in those first two games. They've been almost unbeatable since then. They did have that one slip up against Jacksonville a few weeks ago and have come back strong. I'm on Buffalo in this game. I'm on the money line in this game. We saw, they had lost those two games, the New England game and the Atlanta game, before their bye week. And I thought last week they were going to come out and make a statement, because that's what good teams, that's what Super Bowl contending teams do when they have the right opponent. And Carolina, who had been playing well, was the right opponent, and Buffalo dominated that game from the first snap until the end of the game. What was it? I think 40-9, something like that. Now, that's not going to be the case here. And in fact, you could probably make a case, because these teams play such close games over the years, that maybe you could find, if we see a little bit of a line switch, you might be able at one point to take both teams in a teaser, because you might see Kansas City go to be a small underdog if money comes in on Buffalo, and we'd see another 4-point game somewhere. But I'm going to go with Josh Allen right now. I think he's a solid quarterback. Once again, he's been doing a lot of things that he can do. So can Mahomes. Yes, there are issues with the Buffalo defense, but they were a little bit better rested last week. They held that potent Carolina running attack very much in check. I think they gave up like 114 yards after Carolina had a couple of games with over 200 yards or something. So that was a nice little effort there. And I know that, look, you can make a case for either side in the game, and nobody can argue with you, I think, or at least legitimately argue. I just happen to be on the Buffalo side.
So we've got a Buffalo and we've got an over. Greg DePalma, what are you going to add to the scorecard?
Before I go into this, you mentioned the teasers, Andy. I've been meaning to ask you guys about this. What have you found is a more profitable way to wager? Is it to what is the difference if I see a team, say they're a 6-point favorite, I got two teams as 6-point favorites, and the general money line number at that is whatever, say minus 200, 220, whatever. What's the difference in saying just taking the two 6-point favorites and the money line and parlaying it compared to a 2-team teaser?
That's something that I always advise people to do, whether it be a 2-team teaser or a multiple team teaser. because the teaser payoff is fixed, whatever it is, whatever you have to lay, or if you play with multiple teams, you get a little price. But I always say, and you can find calculators online that'll do that for you. Let's say you do a 3-team teaser. Calculate the money line price that you would have to pay for parlaying those 3 favorites or underdogs for that matter. Although favorites is really where you're looking at, because you could still, cash with teams not winning the game. So you may not want to take that chance, which is the way that you described your example, Greg, and see what the payoff is on the money line, because sometimes almost always it'll be somewhat different than the fixed teaser payout. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, because unlike the teaser payout, that does not vary, but the money line will vary based upon, the money line may vary even if there's no change in the point spread, depending on how people come in, because playing money line parlays has become an increasingly more frequent strategy over the last few years as people start to think in the way that you are thinking, Greg.
Okay. Thank you.
Especially when DraftKings is charging $135 for a 2-team teaser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as this game, I want to highlight this here, and this is important. These players in red are injured players for the Chiefs. This is the Ourlads depth chart page for the Chiefs, and it's not looking good for Trey Smith. Still unknown if Josh Simmons will play, and I don't know if Pacheco is going to play. So we have to keep that in mind now, because this has been for the past several weeks, this has been a relatively injury-free team. They're finally getting everybody back, and they're still at this point one of the most injury-free teams in the entire league, which is ridiculous since they just happen to be almost one of the best. But you got to keep that in mind. And also what I want to keep in perspective too is the fact that, we just talked about the Colts and their schedule. We could talk about the Patriots and their schedule, but it's so typical that because we know the Chiefs are such a dominant franchise and they've earned it. But the fact is, in this little streak that they've gone on in order to become this great team again, they've beaten 2 teams that any good team would have beaten easily. And the other team they beat, everybody had the Chiefs in that game against the Lions, and everybody said, oh, this is an awful spot for the Lions. They're all banged up as more than they've been banged up all season. Now they got to go into Kansas City after the loss to Jacksonville. Everybody knew there was a bad spot for the Lions, and it was, and the Chiefs won, and all 3 games were at home. Now they go back on the road where they're 1-2 straight up and against the spread so far this year and play one of the best home teams in football. And they have a few injuries. And also on the Bills side, they're going to get Matt Milano back. So Matt Milano is definitely playing in this game. They do lose Ed Oliver, maybe for the season. That is a huge blow. I have no idea if he's going to come back. I don't think I've heard anything yet that says he's definitively out for the year, but that is definitely a major blow for the Bills. They did get their first round 1 cornerback back for the first time last week too. So they drafted this kid from Kentucky. He was out all season. He got back. He finally made it to the field last week. So that's good for that secondary of the Bills, which hasn't been very good. And all told, it's about a 3-point line. So we're at 2.5. You buy the half a point, you're at 3. You take the Bills +3 at home, and keep in mind that the Bills are 3-0 straight up and against the spread as a home dog since their 2020 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. So there is that. But they're a tough team to bet against as a home dog, and I'll take the Bills.
2 things to point out there. This is their first home game since that loss to New England, which was almost a month ago because they had a bye week and a couple of road games in there. So that might be another mitigating factor. And as of the injury report that came out yesterday, Pacheco is listed as doubtful, which means that Kareem Hunt will probably see a lot more action than he has.
Well, we've got 2 votes for Buffalo, and we've got an over from Jim Feist for sides in this football game. I'm going to make it 3 votes for Buffalo with an over whipped cream on top of this Sunday, if you will. Andy brings out a great point. The Buffalo Bills had won 16 home games in a row until New England beat them in their previous home game. So now they're playing on what was a 16-game win streak that was just snapped, and now they're home. It's been a month, but now they're home. And there's also, when you're talking about football teams and you talk about playoff revenge, there's varying degrees of playoff revenge. Some teams are in the playoffs and didn't deserve to be there. Some are in there that were obviously number 1 or 2 seeds that did deserve to be there. but there is revenge from a loss in a championship game. A revenge loss from a championship game is deeply meaningful because these teams were just one win away from being in the Super Bowl. And that's what Kansas City did to Buffalo last year. You can rest assured Buffalo is going to realize that and know just that. I'm going to be with Buffalo in this football game. And another side factor here, this comes from my database here also, and I call this thing Darlin' Be Home Soon. And what it is you're going to fade a National Football League team when they're on the road as a favorite in a non-division game when they've been camped at home 3 games in a row. You get a little bit too much of home cooking. You get a little fat and sassy sitting at home like that. Now you're
like the Bills did when they lost to the Patriots.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So you now all this home cooking fattens you up a little bit, made you attractive to the bettors out there because you likely fared well in the 3-game homestand, which is what Kansas City just did. So right now, if this is like a stock, you're going to be Kansas City's went from down. Now they're season high peak, and you're going to go lay points on them on the road to the second best team in the AFC. That's a no-no in my mind. So I'm going to play Buffalo plus the points and make it a 3-0 Buffalo with, as I mentioned, the whipped cream and the cherry on top to the over in this game.
Mark, you bring up a good point. I'm curious because it's not significant to the extent that it's a small number, but how do those numbers change if in this game, instead of being a 1.5 point or 2 point dog, they were a very, very slight under a field goal favorite?
Well, as I begin the query, Andy, I'm obviously querying what do dogs do in these roles, or what do road favorites do in these roles. Put the team that's been camped at home in the most undesirable row. That would be having to lay points on the road. Yeah, I can go back and tweak that up, and I'm sure what I'll come back with will still keep a winning angle on this particular perspective, this Darlin' Be Home Soon angle.
Yeah.
But it won't be as deep and strong as it is in this, just on the blind. But I just laid out for you guys, okay? Home, 3 games in a row, non-division road favorite. Those teams are 27 and 57 against the spread, trying to do just that. That's what Kansas City's up against here, and I can drill down deep into that until I strike gold and find a perfect angle inside that.
I think all 3 of you have talked me into playing Buffalo.
Uh-oh.
Well, hopefully some of our listeners, maybe too.
But I am on the over, though.
Good.
Yeah. No, and by the way, that revenge from a championship game makes a lot of sense because you know what happens after this game? If Buffalo wins, yay, Buffalo. Kansas City, big deal. We'll beat them in the playoffs.
Oh, that's why Buffalo keeps beating him in the regular season.
Yeah, and the Chiefs will just shake it off.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, now it's an important game, by the way, for both teams. It's important for Kansas City because they're in a division battle with Denver and the Chargers. At the same time, Buffalo is no longer the king of the East. They have competition and actually are a little bit behind New England, whom they have to play on the road later in the year. So it makes it an even more important game for Buffalo to that extent, when in most cases this situation would say it's a bigger game for Kansas City than it is for Buffalo because Buffalo's got the AFC East wrapped up. That's not the case this year.
That's a nice juicy point you bring out there, Andy. They're looking up at New England right now as well. It's everything you'd look for in a live home dog, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, this is that's going to scare me. If the Chiefs win this game, then see, I know there's a lot of people, look, they're the favorite to win the Super Bowl now. I'm not there yet, but I will be convinced if they beat Buffalo on Sunday, I think everybody's in trouble. Chiefs look like, barring any major injuries, it is going to be very tough to stop them.
Kansas City, Detroit would be a very, very intriguing and probably entertaining Super Bowl matchup, assuming full health or close to full health for both teams.
Well, let's check our chat before we let Jim go here. We had Double Aces called us a great show once again. Keep up the good work. It looks like Adam, last man, mentions that the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens, win but cover 7. Don't trust both teams. That's a good point. Do you trust either of those 2 teams in that game, Miami or Baltimore? It's kind of iffy, I guess, to say the least.
Miami's already gotten their win for October, and November doesn't start till Saturday.
Yeah, taking the Miami to win the game, that would be freaky, wouldn't it? With Lamar Jackson coming back.
Yeah, that'd take some stones to do that on a Monday.
Yeah, but what version?
But I do like the Dolphins covering, though.
What version of Lamar Jackson are we going to get? Because, a hamstring is a very dangerous situation. If he starts to run, he could pull that again. So
I think that's why they kept him out of last week's game because they knew they had 4 days rest.
We may not see the normal Lamar here because of that hamstring.
That's a real good point, Jim. He's not going to be in peak season form. There's no question about that. So now the game's being priced because Lamar Jackson is behind center.
Right.
Right. So,
this text scares me a little bit.
How's that?
You want to read it?
I can't see anything. There's nothing there.
Been with you, Mark, since the A&M days.
No, you're looking all the way down at the end. The one that's on the
early
screen.
days. Oh, all the way down?
No, right there. This one. I want you guys so bad.
Not quite sure how to take that.
Yes, that's why it makes
it sounds like there's a half of the sentence that's not being shown. What comes after the word bad?
Does that come from Taylor Mathis by any chance?
Taylor comes from Taylor Swift.
And Adam, last man. Now I don't know who the creeps are, but these creeps who control all sports use numerology. Anybody have an answer for this response?
I haven't the slides.
No, I can't.
A creep that controls
way
all
over my head.
I don't know if there's a creep that controls all sports.
I do think one of the keys to tonight's game, again, I look at the rushing. Baltimore, 133 yards per game. They're 8th in the league, and that's even with these games without Lamar Jackson. And Miami's 28th. They allow almost 150 yards per game. So if Derrick Henry can get started, it might take some pressure off Lamar, and he might be able to do a few things, provided he gets that support from Derrick Henry.
Hey, Jimmy, before I let you go, I'm going to throw another cherry on your whipped cream on this Buffalo Sunday, okay? I've often talked about one of the best handicapping statistics are teams that lead the league in rush attempts per game. Who is the number one team in the National Football League that leads the league in rushing attempts per game? The Buffalo Bills.
I'm going to say it's probably the Colts. I'm going to say Colts.
No, it's Buffalo.
Oh, it is. I didn't know.
Yeah.
How's Detroit? Isn't Detroit up there as well?
Number 2, Andy. Detroit's number 2.
Yeah, because one of the things I take a look at is the rush to pass play different, split, and I show Buffalo at a little bit over 50%, and Detroit a little over 52% for Buffalo.
And Carolina number 3, the Panthers number 3.
Yeah, and by the way, Buffalo, you factor in Josh Allen, that's a significant portion of those numbers because he's really, really good, especially on designed plays.
And we want to thank Smarty Jones for the super chat donation of $10.
Oh, nice.
So thanks.
The horse or the real guy?
Smarty actually, that's good timing because I actually had this as an answer because we were wondering about Smarty last week, and this came from the comment section last week. So I'll put this up as big as I can. And he basically responded and it says, Smarty Jones was my only Derby winner back in 2004 at 4-1, won the Preakness and then lost Belmont Stakes to a 36-1 long shot. So we would all assume that the reason why he uses Smarty Jones is because it was his only Derby winner. So,
and by the way, no disrespect to Smarty Jones for the $10 contribution, but if it were Smarty Jones, the horse, the decimal point would not be there.
Well, unfortunately, Smarty Jones, the horse, can't write that check. He's no longer with us.
That's too bad. And since we're still here in the comment section, this is from Toma 8883. Huge fan, would run into Andy at the Skyline William Hill book years ago. Never met Mr. Feist, but knew it was a private client of Dave Koken, and he had the utmost respect. Loved the show.
Awesome.
Yeah, that goes back away. Yeah,
Thank
Skyline.
You.
Yeah. Andy, you leave a big
Skyline,
impression.
they actually have a very good restaurant there as far as the quality of food for a place like that. It's a small locals casino hotel.
And Adam, by the way, Mark,
owned by one of the big car dealership owners in town.
That he's been with you since the AM days, the 1990s. Adam, last man.
Adam, my man. Appreciate that. With long time connected at the hip, that's a good thing. Appreciate that. Well, Jim, I'm going to let you roll. I know you've got things to do on your plate. It's a busy, busy week.
It is definitely Equinox week.
Equinox week, exactly right. They'll keep you
Daylight savings time week.
on top of Thank goodness. Now when I go to bed, the sun might be coming up rather than being pitch black.
Thanks, guys, everybody. Good luck,
Jim,
everybody.
let me know when you want to do the teaser and the contest thing
I will
later
do
today,
that. Thanks,
today
guys.
or tomorrow.
Jim, I'll
Thanks,
catch up
Jim.
with you tomorrow when we do our Friday show.
Okay.
All right, be well. That was Jim Price joining us from Las Vegas, the legend himself. And it's time now to get into the college football portion of the show. A good meaty college football card, personally, I think, largely because we're into this meaty portion part of the season. And with that, let's tear apart a few games if we can here. Any thoughts, Andy? I meant to mention this last week and forgot to, but any teams that you see right now that might end up this football season undefeated? I know Ohio State would be the likely front runner, but of the other, I think it's 6 teams are undefeated. Of the other 5, who would you cast your vote for as to be a possible team that finished the football season undefeated?
Well, define the end of the football season. You mean that through the national championship game or the regular season?
At the end of the national championship.
Okay, because I could see Indiana ending up unbeaten heading into a likely Big Ten matchup against Ohio State. A&M, well, they got some tough games coming up to end the season, including a game against Texas. We'll talk about Texas. I think it's one of the games a little bit later. Trying to think who the other unbeaten teams are right now. I'm trying to think who else comes to mind. I don't have a list in front of me as far as the unbeaten teams, but Indiana comes to mind because I think that win at Oregon, I think, has Indiana believing that they can beat Ohio State.
What about
that?
Texas
Was a big
A&M?
win. A&M, I'm not sure. Let me take a look at their schedule. I know they have that big game.
Well, they're in the SEC, so they are going to play some tough teams.
Well, there aren't too many softies. What, Kentucky, South Carolina might be the ones. Let me see who I have here. A&M. They play. The page right
They
here.
still play Texas.
They still play Texas. Samford, South Carolina, and the game this week or next week rather, at Missouri, coming off a bye. So they have a chance. I don't know how they would match up though against either Ohio State or Texas or Indiana in that. Who are the other 3?
Georgia Tech.
Yeah. And the other 2 after that?
BYU.
BYU, I don't think can do it.
Navy. How about the Navy?
Navy, yeah. Navy.
No. Absolutely not.
No, they might not get past. They're not expected to get past this weekend unbeaten.
Yeah, they're going to have like 5.
I think they're
going
to. I do like Navy to cover against North Texas, but I like that game to go over the total. Those are 2 high scoring.
Indiana's got the easiest schedule.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, other than Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, if it was just till the end of the regular season, it's a lock that it's Indiana.
Yeah,
so.
Indiana's a team I just don't want to go against. And again, like I said, I think that they would have the confidence that if they met up with Ohio State in one of the rounds of the championship, and look, it could very well be, and let's say it's a very competitive, let's say it's a very competitive Big Ten championship game, and let's say even one of those teams wins 24-23 or something like that. You could see both of those teams seeded 1 and 2. Assuming no other unbeaten teams after conference championship games, which means that BYU, A&M, Georgia Tech, and the other one you mentioned, don't recall it exactly how it was, would go down.
Georgia Tech, BYU,
A&M, and
Indiana,
the other one.
Ohio State, Navy.
Yeah, Navy would go down. Yeah, so I think that barring if it's a one-sided game in the Big Ten championship, then I don't see that. But if it's a competitive game and let's say it's decided late or in overtime, I could see Indiana, Ohio State as the only 2 unbeaten teams. And I know the committee wouldn't like to do it, but they'd raise a lot of questions if they didn't, because of Indiana's win at Oregon. If they ended up on a very short end of a competitive game, I think you'd see them both 1 and 2.
1 and 2. Oh,
if there's no other unbeaten team, let's say Ohio State wins, and they're the only unbeaten team after the conference championship games, they're the number 1 seed. If Indiana's unbeaten going into that game and they lose a very close competitive game to Ohio State, and every other team like Indiana now has 1 loss, I could see Indiana being the number 2 seed. they will have lost to the number 1 seed in a competitive game in the Big Ten title.
Well, let me say this, guys. We're at the stage of the season now, and I have this in our playbook newsletter this week. It's called As the Noose Tightens. And it gets really, really tight for these undefeated teams this stage of the season. Game 9 out when you're favored on the road. You talk about teams that gag. That's usually when their first loss occurs on the road, generally against a pretty decent football team. And we've got 2 teams that have the noose tightening around their throat this week. Keep an eye out for Indiana and Georgia
Maryland
Tech. And Georgia Tech, yes.
NC State.
Yes.
At NC State.
It gives you Maryland and NC State. See if you don't do any worse than 1-1 backing those 2 ugly dogs.
Now you're saying on the money line or straight up?
Straight up on the money line. No,
Okay. No, because we're talking about undefeated. Indiana can win by 18 points. They're still unbeaten with an impressive record. But you're right. Maryland would cash the ticket in that one.
Well, I can drill this thing down a little bit here, Andy, and I'll do that for you right now. If these teams won 11 or less games last year, okay, now they're in this particular role. They are 6-7 straight up and 1-12 against the spread when they're paying somebody off a loss. 6-7, that means the perfect season goes right out the window.
No. Well, it's about 50-50. I mean, it could easily be 7-6, 6-7. It's that 1-12 ATS mark that when I say mark, I'm talking MARK in addition to MARC. Talking to you, that 1-12 mark is very impressive.
Yes, it is.
The ATS.
Yes, it is. Okay, guys, let's get into our college football card this week. And as I mentioned here, I think we've got a pretty decent-looking college football card. Let's start this off if we can. Let me find my script here if I can. I'm
Big 12.
Swimming along a little ways. Greg's giving me all kinds of hints.
Fight on.
Texas Tech at Kansas State.
Oh, okay. Big 12.
Texas Tech at Kansas State. This is an attractive game. It doesn't matter which side of the equation you're on. These are 2 really good football teams. One real good. The other one's rock solid good. Andy, what are you going to look at here? The Red Raiders or Kansas State Wildcats?
Well, this was actually one of the games I had in the newsletter this week that I did a write-up on. I write up 4 college and 4 pro games in addition to giving opinions and everything else. And Kansas State plus the 7 over Texas Tech is something that I like. Kansas State struggled early in the season, then they got things moving. Texas Tech, of course, had that big win, that 34-10 win at Utah, but they also had a nice win against Houston. But they fell a couple of weeks ago. They showed their vulnerability at Arizona State in losing that game. So they haven't played a lot on the road. Kansas State has had a lot of success over the years. In fact, they've won 8 straight games against Texas Tech in the series. 6-1-1 against the spread. They did not play last season, but Tech will be happy to avenge those 8 straight-up losses. This is kind of like my analysis, and it was not quite as strong as yours, Mark, but I alluded to this game earlier with Indiana going into Oregon and pulling the straight-up upset. I thought Indiana would cover. I had Oregon's great home record standing up straight up, so that was that. I kind of see the same thing here, where I think Texas Tech, and of course we don't know how healthy the quarterback is, but they did show some vulnerabilities. Kansas State is playing its best football. We have that historical record. Of course, they didn't play last year. Excellent coaching from Kleinman on Kansas State. Solid quarterbacking. I have Texas Tech winning this game something like 27-24. So you get the money with Kansas State, and Texas Tech maintains in its lofty position.
Well, Greg, I know you, and I know inside and out you, and I know if you're looking at this game, and if you're looking at Kansas State, which I kind of think you are, it has to be considered on your money line list as well. Am I correct on that assumption or not?
If I was going to take Kansas State.
Yes, that's the big if.
Yes. But I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, I really liked, and we talked about, this was the reason when we talked about the Sunflower Showdown last week. And we were all over Kansas State. And they just blew out Kansas in the second half and proved exactly why we thought the game was going to go the way the game was going to go. But now they're stepping up in competition, and they're playing the team right now that should be considered the team to beat in the Big 12. They're definitely going to play. They're going to end up in the championship game. They're just too good. They'll end up there. But it's a big step up. I really like the way Kansas State and Chris Klieman has turned their season around since that early bye we mentioned last week, and it's continued after a blowout win last week. But this is just going to be too big of a step up, especially when you're looking at a Texas Tech team. And this is, look, I could sit here and be braggadocious about it and say, hey, yeah, Texas Tech, they're definitely going to be in the championship game. But they're not going to be that like that. They're going to realize, they know that they've already got a loss in the conference. This is a big game for Texas Tech.
Isn't BYU one of those unbeaten teams?
Yeah, and they're playing BYU next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you take a look, I'll pop up the standings right here, and you can see.
Could that be a look ahead?
No, because of what I just said. You can't afford the loss. I mean,
no. That they win but don't cover.
Yeah, but that's saying that we got a 1-score lead and we could lose this game in the fourth quarter if we give up a score. Now, look, I just think that Texas Tech is going to go into this game playing as hard and as big as they can play. They know this is a dangerous game. Kansas State's playing their best football of the year, but I just think Texas Tech is a better team. They do get Baron Morton back. Now, they lost their backup quarterback, Will Hammond, for the season, and that's unfortunate. But the timing, see, this is the thing we don't know. We're just assuming, because the coaching staff's telling us that, oh, well, it's good timing because now Baron Morton's ready to play. But how do we know he's ready to play? We are guessing that he's ready to play.
And at what level, right?
Yeah, so I'm just going to take the coach's word for it and say he's ready to play. But if he's not ready to play, and you might want to keep an eye on them in the first quarter, do some live betting in the game. And if you see Baron Morton looks like the old Baron Morton, then they're okay. If it looks like he's playing like John Mateer and he shouldn't be out there, then you know where this game could go. But, yeah, I'm going with Texas Tech. I just think they're a better team. They know that this is potentially their season, and I think because of that, I think they're going to just outclass Kansas State.
By the way, one thing I like that you did not mention, and Mark may mention it, but that you did not mention, that K-State could have a letdown after beating their arch rival Kansas. What is it now, 17 in a row that they've won? It's no big deal anymore.
Do you see any in that in your trends, Mark? Any Kansas State fallouts? Because I didn't notice any myself.
Well, stay with me, guys. I'll bring it up right here as we're speaking. Okay.
Yeah, because
carry the conversation on while I.
Because of course they've got what is it now? 16 straight, 17 straight.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So in other words,
so last year,
it's kind of like Kansas City losing at Buffalo. Big deal.
Yeah,
we lose there every regular season, and we beat them in the game that counts.
Yeah. Now, the last 2 years, they did lose the following game, but in 21-22, they won and covered the following game. So I don't see anything. No. Yeah, it's kind of it's not one of those trends that I see, Mark. I don't know if you notice anything.
Yeah. Well, no, I was just thinking because it's a traditional rival, in-state, K-State, Kansas, sure. that I would think that Kansas State this year, because it's been, and maybe in most years because it's been so one-sided that it's you can't really talk about it as a letdown anymore. It's different it would be different if Kansas had pulled the upset.
True.
They would have a letdown this week.
True. Agreed.
But not for a team that you've beaten 16 times in a row.
Yes. That's why I wouldn't worry about that at all.
Yeah. That's why I'm glad you didn't mention it.
Yeah, yes. I'm glad I didn't either. And again, remember, next week, Texas Tech is going to host BYU. No. They have a bye this week. So BYU will be a road dog. There'll be an undefeated dog next week, Mark, at Texas Tech. And then that's it for Texas Tech because their last 2 games are against Central Florida and West Virginia. So as long as they could survive and go, really, they may have to beat both of these teams in order. And I definitely know they got to beat BYU. Now, Cincinnati's got Utah on Saturday night, and that'll be a huge game also in the Big 12. Because Utah also with 2 losses, Utah has still got some hope that everybody can beat each other up. So, it's a tough place to play. But I'm actually surprised that that's a 10-point spread against Cincinnati on Saturday night.
It opened 7, and they've been betting Utah like crazy all week.
Yeah, I think that's over-exaggeration. I don't think anybody believes in Cincinnati, and I think they get this Utah deal. They're so tough to play at home, especially at night. And they just throw all this money at him. But I think Cincinnati is going to give him a great game. So I think that spread's way out of whack.
Yeah, I thought 7 was reasonable. I'm not going to, even if it's at 10, I don't know that I can play Cincinnati. But just because Utah is so strong. And I think they showed a lot in that game against BYU a few weeks ago. Just like they showed against Texas Tech.
All right, guys, Kansas State 9-3 straight up in ATS after Kansas. So on that side of the rivalry of the was it the Sunflower rivalry?
Sunflower
Showdown.
Okay, sunflowers.
I mean, it's been sunflowers for Kansas State. It's been dandelions for
For
Kansas.
Kansas.
Yeah.
For Kansas, huh?
Pretty bad.
Wow. So Greg is on all over Texas Tech in this game. Andy, you make Kansas State the live dog. Is that correct?
I don't have them winning the game. I do have them covering the spread. I think it's a competitive game.
I think it is a competitive game as well. And Greg mentions about BYU being up on deck next week. I think it is important. Number one, I realize they can't afford a loss, but never, and against whomever they're playing at this stage of the season, they can't afford a loss. We could be talking to them about Colorado in a game like this. They can't afford a loss. But that's a big, huge football game. And you've got a Kansas State football team that's won 15 of the last 18 games straight up at home, feeling pretty good about themselves. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, is Kansas State like one game under 500 on the season right now? I think they need this game sort of getting close to like blood.
They're actually 4-4.
4-4, yeah.
4-4. Okay, they're going to need 2 more wins along the way, and I think they got 2 scrubs along the way. I know.
Well, that'll get them bowl eligible then.
Colorado
They'll take care of
and
those 2
Oklahoma
scrubs and go, and that'll be their 6 wins.
Yeah. So that it's not mandatory in that sense.
No.
But I'm going to go with Kleiman. I think he's a really, really good coach. I'm not saying Joey McGuire is not. Joey McGuire's got all the talent in this football game. That's evident by
And all the NIL.
Yes, exactly right. All the money. Exactly. So put me down.
They better win this game, or Joey McGuire. There's a lot of coaches getting fired. So Joey McGuire is not Brian Kelly either, or James Franklin. So it'll be easy to fire Joey McGuire if he doesn't get this team to the Big 12 championship game.
If he doesn't get the team to the Big 12 championship.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If they don't even get to the Big, he's gone. No way will they retain him.
Well, that'd be a shame because he can have the season like 10-3, and they're going to can him. You know.
Yeah. Well, I just look at Brian Kelly. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, Brian Kelly's record is, you look at it and you go, he got fired. It's like nowadays they don't care anymore. It's all about the donors. It's the people who put up the big money to pay for these players. They're the ones that are deciding what's going on.
That's because all those big donors for LSU were betting on LSU to win those games, and they lost money. They were trying to get their donation back through a gambling.
Yeah, I'm sure they were.
I don't know if that's true, but I mean that is a factor to consider with the donors. But also keep in mind that the 3 previous LSU coaches each won national titles, including Nick Saban, within the first 4 years of taking over.
Sort of like reminds me of a little bit about Earl Bruce at Ohio State, and they fired him, and all the poor guy ever did was won football games there.
Yeah, except against one team.
Yeah, Michigan, right.
Yeah.
Well, that was the same thing with Cooper.
Yep, racing to get drop kicked right out the door.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's go to the next game. Another Big Ten matchup here this week. Southern Cal at Nebraska. 5 years ago, this would not have been a Big Ten matchup. It would have been Pac-12 against Big 12. But nonetheless, this is the Big Ten right now. Southern Cal started a little bit slow. They've kind of worked their way back up, and Nebraska is also working their way back up. Andy, what do you think, Cornhuskers or Trojans?
I've been very disappointed in the job Matt Rule has done. I think you've talked about the success that he's had in his second and third years of taking over programs. We saw it previously at Temple with perhaps the best example. That's not been the case. He did have some improvement after the first year back in 2024, and they sort of plateaued. I don't know that they much had great improvement this year. I've been making money going against Nebraska as a favorite because they've been winning close games, or of course a close game to Michigan that they lost at home, but they haven't been able to put teams away. And I think in USC, they will be facing the best offense that they will have seen all year, and I'm not quite so sure that they can keep up with Nebraska as far as trading points go. Lincoln Riley, he's won some big games this year. In fact, just take a look at the comparison between Nebraska's game against Michigan and USC's game against Michigan, both of which were home games for the teams facing Nebraska. Nebraska was on the road for both of those games, so it's not a game I'm likely to play. I'd like to make a case for taking the points with Nebraska, and Mark, I would think that you probably have some positive things that would support a play on the underdog, but I just find it uncomfortable backing Nebraska based upon their inability to win games in manners better than in which they were expected. And by that, I mean not covering spreads when they were favored.
Yeah,
I know they're the underdog here.
they've
Yeah.
underperformed since he got into this year 2, year 3 situation with Nebraska. Greg, what do you think happens here between?
Oh, and by the way, you got the rumors surrounding Matt Rule for the Penn State job. Don't know how much, if anything, it's a distraction, but I wonder how many of the players might not be might not be upset to see a coaching change.
Well, how many of those same players are thinking about transferring to Happy Valley with him?
We talked about that last night on the Penn State show. So the first segment was about the coaching change. Second segment was about the Ohio State game. So you might want to check that out. That's available on Proline TV. Marty Leap, who covers the Penn State Nittany Lions.
By the way, is there any truth to the rumor that before James Franklin was fired, Ohio State was a 24-point favorite, and they appreciate the firing, so now it's down to 21?
Ooh, that's a James Franklin slap if I've ever heard one.
Well, we got a lot of history to support it, unfortunately.
Yes, we do, Andy. Yes,
He's a good, look, I mean, I feel sorry for him losing the job, but he's going to make out quite well, either in retirement or as he gets another job. And he's still a coach who knows how to win.
On cue.
In most situations.
Greg, no Drew Aller for Penn State. We're talking about them. What do you think they do at Ohio State this week? I know it's not the game we're talking about, but there's some interest in the game because of the big spread.
Well, we went over the idea of, okay, what does Penn State have to do to win the game? Can they?
By the way, didn't they play well against Iowa in the first game after Franklin was let go?
They've lost their 4 games this year by a total of 13 points. They've lost their last 2 games by 1 point. They are showing that even though they've been a disappointment, that they're still a very talented team. They got a bye to prepare. And I don't care that Ohio State had a bye. It's Ohio State. But for Penn State, that means that they had time to kind of regroup. And we kind of believe that this is the opportunity for some of these players that have underachieved to show that, hey, you know what? You don't want to get embarrassed out there because Ohio State can embarrass you. So they got to go out there and they got to play their best game of the year. They still have a good defense. They got a young quarterback that the program really likes, Drunkenmeyer kid. And so, this is now him getting an extra couple of weeks to prepare. We went over some scenarios, and keep in mind that Penn State's covered 5 out of the 8 losses that they've had to Ohio State in the last 8 appearances. And they've also covered the 3 point spreads that were over 13 points. So they were a 15-point, 18-point, and 20-point dog during that 8-game stretch. And Penn State's covered all 3 of them. So I think Penn State's a good cover with the big spread. And if they can get that game into halftime and keep it like a 1-score game, somehow the defense, because it's still a good defense, somehow that defense, or at least it can be a good defense. If that defense can keep that game close, then all of a sudden all the pressure goes on Ohio State for being undefeated, big favorite. And you also have to keep in mind Julian Sayin, the young quarterback, the young quarterback. He hasn't had any pressure basically this season. He hasn't had to deal with much pressure in the pocket as well. So if Penn State can hit him a couple of times, knock him on his ass early in the game, then, there's a possibility. But, it's still it's a big ask.
Let me ask you this, Greg, because you're really good at knowing all the talent on these teams. Even without Aller, does Penn State, considering where they were thought to be at the start of the season, ranked ahead of Ohio State in the preseason with Penn State, Texas 1-2, does Penn State have the talent to beat, not cover, beat Ohio State?
Without Aller, I would say, look, the 20-point point spread is your reason right there to say no. And I think it would be 14 if Aller was there. So they're losing they're losing a score on Aller not being there. That's why you put a young quarterback in there like this kid. That's what I'm saying. It's a big ask with him in there, but talent-wise, outside of the quarterback spot, their talent was pretty good. Matter of fact, they had a couple of guys on defense, maybe up to 3, that was supposed to be considered as first-round draft pick quality kids coming into the season, but they haven't played like it. That's been the problem with the team this year. So that's what I'm saying is if they can get, they would kind of regroup after the bye, and they're going to be scouts galore at this game. And they got to know, hey, I'm playing for my future, either if I'm still not eligible for the draft, and I'm also playing for my future if I am eligible for the draft.
Because that effort against Iowa showed at least some spark in the team, that their season, their dreams of even playing for a Big Ten championship were down, and yet they came out and gave a pretty good effort on the road in a very, very difficult venue to win.
Yes, that showed that they didn't quit, and that's important.
And look who they got next week, Indiana Hoosiers. Wow.
Yeah. So they got Indiana at home next week. But we both agreed that we think that if they're going to keep a game close or maybe even surprise everybody and win a game, that this is the game they have the best chance at. Because that home stadium situation is maybe not going to be very good for them. I mean, that crowd they'll turn on them in 2 seconds. If they have like a 3-and-out to start the game or something, or if Indiana comes down and scores a touchdown, and you know how sometimes it's harder.
How would that change? How would that change if they happen to pull that upset of Ohio State?
The Indiana game?
Yeah.
Oh, the crowd, that would change it. But then again, we're talking about just like anticipating Penn State, if they beat Ohio State, to also beat Indiana. I think that'd be asking for just
it would be, but again, I go back to the preseason rankings, and of course they're just opinions, but they're well researched and understandable, supportable opinions. They were considered ahead of Ohio State to start the season, and Aller had a lot to do with it. But if they're able to beat Ohio State without Aller, then maybe they do have a chance to not. And how would that be? I mean, I hate to be James Franklin and have Penn State knock off both unbeaten teams after you're gone. But the point is that the talent could very well be there, and that would be validated if they happen to pull the upset. I'm not expecting them to pull the upset, but we've seen stranger things in college football even this season.
All right, guys, we got detoured a little bit here off of our Southern Cal Nebraska game and went plateaued deeply into Ohio State, Penn State as a bonus discussion.
Yeah.
And I believe you two have both expounded on Nebraska and Southern Cal. Am I correct?
I haven't. I'll just give a quick one. I'm taking.
Yeah, I did say briefly I would tend to play USC because I'm anti-Nebraska, and I made money going against Nebraska this year, albeit as a favorite. But it's probably not a game I'm going to play.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with Andy right down that line. Is that it's like I don't want to take USC because they're not good road favorites. They're 3-13 under Lincoln Riley as a road favorite, and that really worries me. But they're just a better team than Nebraska right now, and I'll go ahead and take USC. Also, keep this in mind: Nebraska has now lost 28 straight games versus top 25 teams. They lost again to Michigan this year. So their last win against a top 25 team was back in 2016.
How would you rate the coach? Which team, Nebraska and USC, has the better coach?
Oh, no, in my mind, it's not even close. It's
Lincoln Riley?
Yes. Yeah. And by the way, Penn State fans do not want Matt Rule there. And it looks like the two top contenders, based on our conversation last night, are Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri.
Oh, very good.
Or if they want to go with a coach, a hot candidate that has never been a coach before, it would be Brian Hartline out of Ohio State.
What about Lee at Vanderbilt? Is his name brought up?
No, not really. But again, it's early. And I think the big problem with some of these other coaches that they might be interested in is Penn State's not going to wait for the playoffs and, a team that might
want to get a head start on recruiting and all that.
Yeah.
And Franklin was out of Vanderbilt. I don't think they want to go 2 times in a row to Vanderbilt for a head coach.
Probably not. That wouldn't be a good look.
So. Yeah. I'm going to take the points with Nebraska here, guys. Greg brings out a great point. Lincoln Riley does not play well at all laying points on the road. He's kind of a gravy guy at home. And you go back and you look the last 16 times Matt Rule's taken points at home. He's gone 11-5 to the number. I think this is a huge game for the Nebraska Cornhuskers here. I know they got their 6th bowl eligible win, and you've got Southern Cal needing this win for their 6th bowl eligible win. But I think this is going to come down to who scores last. Not a real strong side, but just an opinion.
Any thought, Mark, with the fact that USC, I suppose, still has some opportunity, though unlikely, to get in the Big Ten championship game with just 1 loss? Should Ohio State or Indiana fail and they go to tiebreakers or something?
I'm sure that's exactly what Lincoln Riley's putting in their ear.
Telling the team, yeah.
Exactly right. Beyond this, other than traveling to Oregon, they've got all winnable games. So, they'll need to obviously win this, not get tripped up, and then a big effort.
They need help.
Yes,
they need help, but it doesn't. But they can only do what they can do. And as long as they believe that they have a chance chance by winning out, which is possible, and it would start here, that you might get something. Nebraska, where's Nebraska? They've already got 2 losses in conference play.
Well, at least they have Oregon on their schedule, which is good. So they can eliminate one team. And I guess the question would be, what's the tie?
And if Ohio State, well, no, if Indiana loses somewhere along the line, that eliminates another team that would have an edge over Oregon.
Okay, guys, we talked about Vanderbilt a couple of times. That's our featured game of the week this week. The surprising Vanderbilt Commodores, 2 years running now, going to travel to Austin to take on the Longhorns, Texas. I don't know for sure yet. Either of you guys heard about Arch Manning? Is he playing or not? Game time decision.
Still concussion protocol, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'll say this: I haven't. Look. I know college is different regarding injuries. We know that, no question about it. But anytime I hear a player that's in concussion protocol in football does not play the next week, so it just doesn't happen. You miss a game. Now, again, it's college. But in the NFL, it's like rock solid, 99.9%. You're in concussion protocol for the first time. You are not playing that week. College are a little bit more looser with it, but that is a big deal. And the line is still 2, Mark. So,
well, the question is, how much of a drop off is there considering Arch Manning's, I'd have to say, for lack of a better word, disappointing season?
Well, he had a big game last week just when they needed it. And I think look, I don't think this Texas team, if this was last year's Texas team, I'd feel a little bit more confident with a backup quarterback. But the fact is, this Texas team is showing they're overrated. They have a pretty decent defense. But offensively, they really haven't been good at all. Last week, when they came back down 3 scores, even though one was a punt return touchdown, we got to keep that in mind. But when they came back, that was like the first time they showed any life offensively most of the season. So I can't imagine the backup quarterback would be something that they'd want to experience.
Because a lot of people suggested, from what I've been hearing around town, is that if Manning is ruled out, it wouldn't be that significant of an adjustment in the line.
Well,
because a lot of people think this line is short given the play of Vanderbilt this year.
And a lot of people think this backup quarterback, for the way Manning has played this year, is not all that much of a step back.
Drop off,
Matthew Caldwell. He's been around before. He transferred from Troy, and I think he may have also. I know he's been at one other school, but what I did read about him is he is really, really well liked on this program. He runs everything. He runs the second team offense. He runs plays, discusses things, tells players what they're doing wrong, and yada yada. They all got great respect for this kid.
Coach on the field.
Yes, he is.
Coach in the huddle.
He's a coach in the huddle. Exactly right. So he may well be stepping in for Arch Manning. We'll find out come Saturday. But Greg, it sounds like you're going to be with your Vanderbilt Commodores this week.
Well, they've given me no reason to step off of them because this is it. I mean, every game they play at this point after the loss to Alabama was you lose, no SEC championship. And so I have no reason to bail on them. But I will say this, that this game does worry me the most, even though Texas has not played very good football the last few weeks. But it does worry me because they're on the road and Texas is also – you wonder about the way they've won the last few weeks. You know, they've kind of gut checked, which is impressive in these wins. I mean, they had like less than 200 yards of total offense at Kentucky and still found a way to win that game. And then Tennessee put a 50-something spot on Kentucky the next week. So it just shows you that this Texas team is overrated and all that. But yeah, I would feel a lot better if Arch Manning wasn't playing. I don't care about the backup, all that stuff. It means more in the NFL to me than college. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried in this, but I go back to my trusted trend that has worked for many, many times in the past year and a half. And that is Diego Pavia is 14-3 against the spread as a road dog. And the only loss as a road dog he had this year, the Alabama one, that was kind of fluky. And it happened on the last possible play that Alabama was going to run before they would have taken a knee. And so I'll take Vanderbilt.
Looks for Vanderbilt to go to 6-0 as a single-digit dog in this football game. Andy, what are your thoughts on this big contest?
This is another one that I wrote up, and I do support Texas here. I'll read part of what I wrote. I said, despite the 2 losses, Texas remains very much in the hunt for not just a playoffs berth, but also a potential national title, and here's why. Their road is challenging, but a successful navigation of that road would put the Longhorns in great shape. They're 3-1 in SEC play. With other foes in the with the loss, with other loss, they lost to Florida at home in their last home game, which was like a month ago, because they had, I think, was it 3 road games and the neutral site game in Dallas against Oklahoma. They lost in the season opener at currently unbeaten Ohio State. 5 other SEC teams have 0 or 1 loss, and Texas will play 4 of those 5, including Vanderbilt, in addition to Alabama, Georgia, and Texas A&M. So it's a tough road for Texas to be in the SEC championship game, but it's not impossible given the talent, given their preseason expectations. The odds are long, but they have a chance once again to play for the title in the automatic berth. And if they happen to win those games, even with 2 losses, considering the teams they would have beaten down the stretch, they likely would get an at-large. In fact, they almost certainly would get an at-large bid because they beat some of the other teams that they're contending for an at-large bid with if they don't win the Big Ten championship. Vanderbilt's had another remarkable season, topping last year's success. They're 7-1 overall. The lone loss, as Greg mentioned, at Alabama in early October. Come here over wins over LSU and Missouri, and they face another elite defense. Pavia has excelled again for Vandy. He's facing a defense that allows just 4.4 yards per play and 2.4 yards per rush. Vanderbilt also has a very good defense against the rush. After last week's remarkable comeback in what appeared to be a near certain loss with 5 minutes remaining, Longhorns should be fully focused for this game, basically knowing that 1 loss essentially ends any hopes that they have, perhaps and most likely, of even making the college football playoffs as an at-large team. So it's their first home game, as I mentioned, since that loss to Florida, so it'll be an energized crowd. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I have Texas winning. I think the score I have is 27-20.
Well, I'm with Andy in this game, and I'm going to give you a Cliff Notes version because we're running real long, guys. If this was a football game, we'd be into the 4th overtime right now. But what I'm looking at here is a couple of things. Number one, for my database, I do track teams who are ranked number 1 in the preseason poll and how they do throughout the course of the season. These teams, this comes from our Playbook Football News Center. It's a pretty strong angle. An AP preseason top-ranked team, when they take on an opponent that has a better record than they do, they're 13-1 against the spread if that opponent won 7 or fewer games the previous season. That's Texas. Texas is also 17-1 straight up in Austin their last 18 football games. And I like what Andy said, how important this game is for the Texas Longhorns and what they can do with a win like this. They can turn their season right around, and they could also make the college football playoff and then be a force in the playoff because we know there's a lot of talent on this football team. So put me down for Texas. I'll go head-to-head with Greg on this football game. I
will say one thing, and I think, Greg, you might agree. Sarkisian is the second best coach in this game.
Well, that's when number 2 is not a good omen.
Yeah. No, would you agree, Greg?
Yeah, I'm not a big Steve Sarkisian fan.
No,
so.
But I'm saying it's a very, very.
Yeah, I mean, based on what Clark Lee's had to do with a lot less at Vanderbilt. Yeah.
Doesn't Clark Lee seem like the kind of a guy that's going to sign this next mega contract with a major college football program? I know
probably because Diego Pavi is gone after this year, and he has been the big difference.
And that would be a good time to leave.
Yes.
They'll be forming around
leave like John Elway after 2 straight Super Bowl wins.
Yes. So we'll see where Clark Lee lands next year. I don't know if it's LSU or not, but we'll find out exactly what happens.
Or Florida.
Yeah, or Florida, right down neighborhood across the state there. But guys, it's been a great show. I want to thank you both for your participation and great comments, great observations, great theories and thoughts, and great picks here as well. So until next week, for Andy Iskoe from TheLogicalApproach.com in Las Vegas and our producer extraordinaire, Greg DePalma from Prime Sports Network, this is Mark Lawrence. I remind you to always remember to bet with your head, not over it, and